All right, so this is a brief demonstration on using the router bit manager. So let's make the icon where you guys can see it. So you'll start by clicking on the icon. Now it's going to open up the bit library manager window. Before you do anything, you should start by selecting a library. So bottom left here, click select the library. Now your library is your SD card that you will use to transfer files between your PC and your router lift. Now, as you'll see when we export a file, it will go into the library. Now, if there's already files in your SD card, now the SD card needs to be empty to start. But if the SD card already has exported files from the router lift program, you can leave those put and it will just modify the files as opposed to making new ones. Now, if there is no files in here, perfect, it's just going to make new files. So you'll start by selecting that, and now your library is selected. You'll also see if you have your SD card open that it already made 2 text files. Now, the text files will look like mumbo jumbo if you try to open them, but the router lift will interpret them as useful data. So, okay, now to the bit library manager. So now keep in mind, if you click any buttons before you had selected a library, it will let you know, hey, select a library before continuing. Now, you see we have 3 input boxes here. Now, basically, every router bit that you input, we need 3 kind of pieces of information. We need the flush trim, we need the, the category. So if it's a flush trim bit or a chamfer bit or a roundover bit, then we have the actual bit name. So this would be the specific bit. So if it's a white side quarter-inch spiral, that's the example I use there. Now you're limited on characters. So, as you can see, I abbreviated white side there. You have 11 characters to work with on the bit type and 16 characters to work with for the bit name. And that's a limitation of the LCD display on the router lift controller. So, and then you have the Z height to the top of cutter. Now, this is kind of the crucial bit of information. This is kind of just an organizational thing, so you know which bit you're selecting. This is the portion that the router lift is actually reading to adjust your Z height. Now, if you don't know how to measure it, you can click measure instructions, but I will also explain it here. Now, this is your router collet. This is a 1/2 inch router collet, but it will work with the 1/4 inch router collet as well, depending on what shank size you're using. You're going to measure from take your micrometers and measure from the uppermost point of the collet, the absolute top of the collet. So here there's that band. You don't want to go to the nut. You need to go above the band. You're going to go from the top of the band to the top of the cutter. Now I make a note in here that that's not to the bottom of the bearing. If you look at a router bit, a lot of times the bottom of the bearing is a 32nd or even as much as a 16th from the top of the actual cutter. Now that's going to make a difference. So you need to measure from the top of the collet to the top of the cutter, the uppermost point of the blade. Now if you can read through that, and that'll give you some info if you're lost. Now this is going to be in inches, and it's going to be a decimal. So we'll go through that. But actually, let's start by adding a bit. So let's add flush trim. If you do lowercase, it will appear as lowercase on the LCD display. And if you're into that, that's cool. But I think the uppercase, going all uppercase, is easier to read. So we'll add a white side 1/4 inch spiral. I'm just using this as an example. And I don't know it off the top of my head, but let's say it's 0.5125. And I recommend going to 4 decimal places. The router lift won't handle anything above 4 decimal places, but if you neglect to give 4 decimal places, it will simply take the latter decimals as zeros, and then you're going to hit add bit, and it's going to put you in a place to add another bit. So let's add a couple here. Let's add maybe it's a white side 3/4 inch chamfer bit, and let's say that it's almost an inch. It's 9921. Great. Now, these are completely arbitrary values for the bit name. You have to pick something that when you see it on the router lift LCD, it's going to give you a clear indication of what bit you're using. You could even put the number, like the bit number on there. I know a lot of Whitesides bits have a bit number, and that might be easier for you to reference if you have a lot of bits. Now, bit type is only used for organization. On the LCD display, instead of going up and down in the menu and switching between 100 bits, you pick your bit type, and then it narrows down to just those bits when you're actually selecting a bit. So as opposed to swapping through 100, you might have, at most maybe 20 flush trim bits. You can select flush trim bit on the LCD display and then select, go through all the different bits until you find the flush trim bit you want. So you can have up to 10 bit type categories, and you can have up to 100 different bits. Now, you can have all 100 bits in one bit type category. There's no limitation there, but just know that you can only have a maximum of 10 bit types, and you can only have 100 bits. Now, it will give you a notification if you exceed these values, but just so you know, it will also give you a notification if you exceed the character lengths of either of these. Like I said, 11 for bit type. If you go over 11 characters, as we'll do here, it will just give you a notification that, hey, you've exceeded that. So let's go back to chamfer. So let's go ahead and add this bit. Now, you have 2 bits added to your library now. Now, to view them, you can open the editor window. Now, the editor window will pop up with all the bits you have uploaded in your library. Now, you can go up through the pages, and like I said, it will hold up to 100. So 10 pages of 10. Now, obviously, we only have 2 in here, so not a lot going on. But here in the editor window is where you can edit. Now, you can, let's say you decided that this was a flush trim bit. You made a mistake. You could change that. Or you could, remove this entry entirely. Great. Now, you can swap back and forth between the adder window and the editor window. Now, you can add here, and it's going to do the exact same thing as if we had added, in this other window. It's the same thing. This is just a little bit more streamlined. If you're adding a lot of bits, you can just type, add bit. It will set you back up here to do it all over again. So now you have 2 options for exporting. Well, you have a few options for exporting files. You can click export files, and it will say export file successfully. If there's an issue with your library, it might give you a different notification. Now, the other option is you can add a bit. So let's say that we do a round over, and it's a Whiteside 3/4 inch round over, and you add the bit. Okay, it's giving us an information missing notification here because I failed to put any information in the Z height. So let's do that, and then you can hit add bit and export, and it will add this final bit and export all of your changes. All of your changes in the editor. Now, the last and final one is if you did make a change. Let's say this was a chamfer bit. And you forgot and you exited out, it will ask you if you want to save and export. You can hit no, or you can hit yes. Now let's close out of this, and I'm just going to show you, you have your 2 files here that you're on your SD card now that your router lift will interpret. Now don't open them, don't modify them, just leave them the way they are, and that's good. Now next time you open it and you go select a library, and you select your SD card, when you open the editor window, all of your bits from your bit library will be in here. Now, the nice thing about this is that obviously if you want to just make a simple change, you can reopen it. Let's say we realize that we messed up. This was a round over bit. Great. You can export and export. And the next time you open it, it will make that change. So the nice thing about this, what I was getting ready to say, is that you can transfer these files, on a thumb drive or over the internet or whatever, to somebody else with a router system that maybe has a similar bit library to you, and it will work on their machine as long as they have the same bits. Now, it might be nice, obviously we give you a good starting point with several Whiteside bits, but maybe you modify somebody else's library. You take somebody else's library that's kind of close to kind of similar bits that you have, or bits that you may order in the future, and you can just modify their library. So, all right, I think that concludes it.